Translation. Engage yourself fully, therefore, in the devotional service of the Lord, for only He can deliver us from the entanglement of material existence. Although the Lord is attached to His material potency, He is aloof from her activities. Everything in this material world is happening by the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, please repeat. Oh, as far as tomorrow's verse, so we switched. We have the same verse we were going to do. So this is actually was supposed to be tomorrow's verse, and then tomorrow's verse is going to be the previous verse. So it's out of sequence.
Ron, what time is the break fast today?
I think it's 6 something. I think it's like soon.
Okay, I'll look it up.
It says on my program from 6:08 a.m. to 10:15 a.m.
Oh, so we're already within the window.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Sometimes I take a little nibble.
Okay. So please repeat. Engage yourself fully, therefore.
Engage yourself fully, therefore.
In the devotional service of the Lord.
In the devotional
service of the Lord.
For only He can deliver us from the entanglement of material existence.
For only He can deliver us from the entanglement of material existence.
Although the Lord is attached to His material potency.
Although the Lord is attached to His material potency.
He is aloof from her activities.
He is aloof from her activities.
Everything in this material world is happening by the inconceivable potency.
Everything in this material world is happening by the inconceivable potency
of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
I forgot to ask, how's my voice?
Sounds fine.
Okay, good. All right. So, I'll mute everyone. Okay. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada. In continuation of the previous verse, which we'll cover tomorrow, it is specifically mentioned here that Dhruva Maharaj should engage himself in devotional service. Devotional service cannot be rendered to the impersonal Brahman feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whenever the word bhajasva appears, meaning engage yourself in devotional service, there must be the service, and the served. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is served. The mode of activities to please Him is called service, and one who renders such service is called the servant. Another significant feature in this verse is that only the Lord and no one else can be served. That is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Mam ekang sharanang vraja. There is no need to serve the demigods who are just like the hands and legs of the Supreme Lord. When the Supreme Lord is served, the hands and legs of the Supreme Lord are automatically served. There is no need of separate service. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 12.7, Te shamaham samudharta mrityu sangsara sagarat. This means that the Lord, in order to show specific favor to the devotee, directs the devotee from within in such a way that ultimately he is delivered from the entanglement of material existence. No one but the Supreme Lord can help the living entity be delivered from the entanglement of this material world. The material energy is a manifestation of one of the Supreme Personality of God's varieties of potencies. Parasya Shaktir Vividaya Shruyate. This material energy is one of the Lord's potency as much as heat and light are potencies of fire. The material energy is not different from the Supreme Godhead, but at the same time, He has nothing to do with the material energy. The living entity who is of the marginal potency is entrapped by the material energy on the basis of his desire to lord it over the material world. The Lord is aloof from this, but when the same living entity engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, then he becomes attached to this service. This situation is called yuktam. For devotees, the Lord is present even in the material energy. This is the inconceivable potency of the Lord. Material energy acts in the three modes of material qualities, which produce the action and reaction of material existence. Those who are not devotees become involved in such activities, whereas devotees who are dovetailed with the Supreme Personality of Godhead are free from such action and reaction of the material energy. The Lord is therefore described here as Bhavachidam, one who can give deliverance from the entanglement of material existence. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So again, the translation is, engage yourself fully, therefore, in the devotional service of the Lord, for only He can deliver us from this entanglement of material existence. Although the Lord is attached to His material potency, He is aloof from her activities. Everything in this material world is happening by the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, in this verse, if we go to the second part, it says, Yuktam Virahitang Shaktya Gunamayatma Mayaya. So the energy of the Lord, it's not separate from Him, it's a part of Him, just like heat and light is the energy or the attributes of fire. The heat and light can be referred to as Vishesha, just like one of the sub-darshans is Vaishesika philosophy, Vaishesika. Vaishesika, the word is derived from Vishesh. Vaishesika means the study of like the distinguishing features of everything that we find in this world. And Visheshavada is means the absolute truth is possessed of all kinds of different potencies, qualities, and attributes. So the Lord's energy are His attributes. It's His unlimited qualities. The Lord's energies, or let's say this, if you were to summarize all of existence, you could say that there is the Lord and His attributes, which are the expressions of His personality, the expressions of Himself. There is Vibhu, the supreme, absolute, unlimited being, the greatest of all. So it's like you could say the Lord is the totality. He is the fire, whereas the heat and the light are the attributes of the fire. And this is referred to by Bhaktivinode Thakur as Vaibhava Prakash. When you hear Vaibhava Prakash, you might think that's one of the Lord's descriptions of His expansion, just like when He expands in the Rasa Lila. He expands in His two-arm form. They are the same Him. Not forehand form, but His two-arm form. That's called Vaibhava Prakash. But in this sense, Bhaktivinode Thakur uses the same nomenclature, Vaibhava Prakash, to refer to all of the Lord's energy. If you were to translate Vaibhava Prakash, it means like the dazzling expansion of the totality of all the Lord's energy. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he refers to this because Bhaktivinoda Thakur coined the expression. He refers to it as Advaya Jnana Tattva, right? Advaya, non-dual. Everything is the Lord. The Lord and His energies, that is the totality of existence. There's no separation. Both are the Lord and from the Lord. The Lord and his energies are the same. Only one is the source. In other words, the subject or the predominator, if that's the proper word, predominator, whereas the other is the object, the predominated, his energy. And because he is great, because he is the Vibhu, he is not affected by his own Vaibhav Prakash. Again, Vaibhav Prakash means the expansion of all of his totality, of all of his dazzling energy. So, although he's not affected, as stated in this verse, he is yuktam. He's attached to it. In other words, attached, but never under its control. Just like I have my arm is attached. It's fully under my control. I can utilize it however I want. Yuktam, of course, comes from the root word yuj, which means to join or to attach. And yuktam means to, therefore, to utilize. Just like Srila Prabhupada quotes from the Svetasvatara Upanishad, Parasya Shaktir Vivadaya Shruyate, and then the rest of the verse is Swabhaviki. Swabhaviki Jnana Balakriya Cha. So Swabhaviki means that without endeavor, his energies do everything, and as if automatically. So therefore in this verse it says, Yuktam Virahitam Shakya. Virahitam means he's utilizing this energy, but he's aloof from it. And it's many times the wonderful example is just like the sun. The sun is millions of times bigger than this little speck of dust, the earth, that we are on. And even on this speck, we're such a speck that if some clouds, some mist is created, then it absolutely covers our eyes. But does that mean that the cloud or the mist, the fog, has covered the sun? No, it's covered our eyes. The fog is nothing, or the cloud is nothing but a creation of the energy of coming from the sun. But it can never cover the sun. So similarly, the energy of the Lord can be utilized by the Lord. He's attached to it, he controls it, but he's never controlled by it or covered by it. So therefore, it says at the beginning of the verse, Bhajasva. Bhajasa Bhajaniyan Grim. His lotus feet are worthy of worship, and only by worshipping his lotus feet, Avavaya Bhavachidam. By taking shelter of his lotus feet, that's how we will be delivered. And Srila Prabhupada quotes from the Bhagavad Gita, this Mrityu Samsara Sagara. The Jiva is so tiny. We're completely dependent. If there's any chance that we can be saved from this material existence, it's just like being tossed into the ocean, lost. We have some control, we have some power within us. So we can swim across our swimming pool at home. But if we're thrown into the ocean somehow or other, we can have no chance of getting to the other side. It's impossible. The only way to be rescued from the ocean if somebody comes and picks you up. You have to be rescued. It's interesting, I just heard this conversation again with John Lennon and Yoko Ono that Srila Prabhupada had with them at their estate. And Srila Prabhupada was making the point that you have to get the mantra from the disciplic succession, from the proper to the recipient by the proper guru. And he quoted this, that verse from the Padma Purana, Sampradaya Vihina Ye Mantraste Nishpalamata. That you can't get fruit. Nothing's going to happen if we have a mantra that's not coming in the disciplic succession, in the Sampradaya. But then Yoko Ono, she objected. She said that if a mantra is efficacious, since it's not material, since it's spiritual, If it has any potency at all, then what does it matter who you get it from? And this betrays the material disease that all of us have. This kind of thinking. That I can figure it out. That I can save myself. I don't need anybody else's help. And this actually comes from the original ahankara that we inherited from Lord Shiva, which we won't have time to cover in this class, but I would like to go into detail some other time. But that original feeling of independence, of I am the Lord because I'm part and parcel of the Lord, it becomes perverted as the false ego. So therefore, I don't need anybody else, I can save myself, even though we're so tiny it's impossible. And what this is, because of the false ego, we think in material terms. The material nature is a mechanism, and it is impersonal in that sense. It's just like this. I mentioned this the other day. I'm curious about this, but if you take a certain chemical, it's called potassium permanganate. There you go. Potassium permanganate. I hope I'm pronouncing it properly. Anyway, you take potassium and you mix it with glycerin, and within a few seconds, as soon as you mix that together, it'll ignite, and if you pour a little water on it, it'll actually explode. So it's a chemical reaction. It's an impersonal law. The entire material cosmos is like this. So therefore, we think that if we do something by our own endeavor, then we can save ourselves. But this is not possible. This is a misunderstanding. When we're talking, maybe material nature is impersonal, but when you talk about a person, the Lord, just like if you're talking about another person, if you demand, you love me, or else, how can the other person love you? You can't. Love is something that comes about by its own sweet will. It just happens. You can't force love, or in other words, you can't force bhakti. You can't even force liberation. That comes from the Lord. It must be awarded by Him. So, therefore, in this verse, it says, Bhava-chidam. This material nature is just like an ocean. And in order to get out of it, we need the mercy of the Lord. And what is the Bhava? Is the material nature. Bhava-chidam means to cut the knot of material nature. So what's the knot? Of course, it's attachment to this material world. And that knot is a Gordian knot. It can't be undone. It has to be slashed. Bhava-chidam. Vidyate Pridiyai Grantis Chidyante Sarva Sangshaya. Only by the Lord's mercy can this attachment be cut. And in order to achieve that mercy, Swayambhuva Manu recommends this first word in the verse is Bhajasva, to engage in pure devotional, unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So, as I mentioned before, Gary Govardhana was going to give. I can't give class today. He's going to give class tomorrow on the previous verse. So because I had already prepared for this class, I'm taking this verse, skipped over. And also tomorrow is Bhaktivinode Thakur's appearance day. So what I wanted to do, I thought it was very appropriate because the Swayambhuva Manu is stressing Bhajasva, and Bhaktivinode Thakur, in honor of his appearance day, I wanted to do like just a summary of an entire book that he wrote about his own personal bhajan, which is called the Bhajana Rahasya, which is the process of how to perform bhajasva or bhajan, Bhajana Rahasya. And bhajana has a very specific meaning which is revealed by Bhaktivinode Thakur. The colloquial meaning of, or the common meaning when someone hears bhajan, you think of worship. Naturally, that's what we think about. But it has bhajan has a very deep, confidential meaning. It's more enigmatic than that. It's difficult for ordinary persons like us to understand. Although it's a part of bhakti, bhajan, usually we understand it as worship. So worship is a part of bhakti, of course. Even people with a little tiny bit of beginning shraddha, beginning faith, they go to the temple or the mosque or a church, and they perform some sort of a ritual. In January, I went to my father's funeral, and I hadn't been to a mass, a Catholic, Roman Catholic mass for so long. I'd forgotten how ritualistic it was. I met the priest beforehand, and I had, other than the collar he was wearing, I would have had no clue that he was a priest, because he seemed like a very ordinary person. It's like if you meet somebody like a Radha Swami or something, you immediately think, whoa, this is a saintly person. But with this priest, when I met him, I seemed like a very ordinary person to me. But then he put on his robes and went before the altar and started doing all these different rituals, moving his hand in this way and that way, and ringing the bells, and saying something in Latin, and doing some hymns, and went through a whole ritual. And I could see how everyone that was there, when he did the ritual, that's when they had shraddha. That's when they had faith, that this ritual has some sort of potency. So Bhaktivinode Thakur, in his Chaitanya Shikshamrita, he mentions different motivations that people have when they start to approach the Lord. The first of all, there's bhaya, which is fear. Fear of death, fear of punishment, going to hell. Bhaya is definitely a bona fide motivation for approaching the Lord. But it's not a very high motivation, and it can easily be disrupted. There's bhaya, but then there's asha. That's also motivation. Asha is beyond fear. Asha means you really want something. You want to get a reward. So not only fear of the Lord, but also, hey, this is the big Santa Claus in the sky. He can give me what I want. That's also a motivation. So these are sub-religious motivations. There's also, he mentions, kartavya buddhi. Kartavya buddhi means to have reverence for the Lord, to see the Lord as our provider, as our Father, and to perform devotional service, or perform ritualistic, religious performances with a sense of duty. And it's also the beginning of Vaidhi Bhakti. And this is just the beginning stage of something you can call bhakti, because the fourth type of motivation after this is raga, attachment for the Lord. So those four motivations, bhaya, asha, kartavya buddhi, and raga, are listed by Bhaktivinode Thakur as motivations for approaching the Lord. So within the realm, the kingdom of bhakti, there is provisions for puja, for worship of the Lord, even at the level of nishta for the kanishta, a little bit of faith. It's the beginning, and even if one is approaching the Lord for bhaya or asha, to get something, or out of fear, or even our kartavya buddhi, understanding the Lord is our provider, and therefore we have to follow the rules and regulations of Vaidhi Bhakti. Those are all there, but there is the ultimate stage, which is bhajan. Bhajan means raganuga bhakti. Unfortunately, it's easy for conditioned souls like us to equate the same. When we hear bhajan, we think of it as puja, as like temple worship, like that, but it's not at all, because it's not on the same level. So in order to try and explain this, I'm going to my next slide. There you go. Okay, so I thought a visual might help. Just one second, I got messed up. I got to really follow my notes, because it's like a little complicated. There we go. Okay, so puja is a part of the 9 processes of devotional service, Navada Bhakti. But it's not the whole. Because it's a part, it cannot be the whole. The whole of Navada Bhakti is bhajan. Puja, or even archana, when we begin in a contaminated state, it's reverential service, with ritual, with awe and veneration, and with all kinds of paraphernalia. Whereas bhajan, it culminates in pure love of Godhead, just like it's stated in this verse, to perform pure devotional service. And again, getting back to this Bhajana Rahasya, which I want to do a little summary of by Bhaktivinode Thakur. It's defined as, bhajan is the culmination of fraternity, friendship, and complete dependence on the Lord. So we start with puja when we're still in a contaminated state, identifying with our body and mind, which is on the platform of begins with Bhaya, then Asha, and then Kartavya Buddhi. But then ultimately bhajan is performed above all of this on the platform of Raganuga. So I'm going to go to the next slide. And I presented this slide some time ago when I had done a class on Nyaya, mentioning Nyaya, about how there's Lalika perception, or ordinary perception through the senses and the mind. But then there's something beyond this, so I can't go through all this again, there's no time, but it's mentioned even in the Nyaya sutras that there's a type of perception that is not lalika, it's alaukiki. It's perception that is referred to as yogaja, something beyond the senses and the mind, and it's the entire realm, alaukiki, or not ordinary perception, is covered from yunjan, or the practice of yoga, to yukta, or the perfection of yoga. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he defines this kind of alaukiki perception, or bhajan, that it leads to the proximity of Advaya Gyan Tattva. We mentioned that before. So Advaya Gyan means non-dual. We don't see ourselves separately from the Lord. So Bhajana Rahasya, the title of Bhaktivinode Thakur's book, has a very specific meaning in that it's pointing out a specific type of practice. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami, he delineates how to perform devotional service, beginning with Adau Guru Ashraya, that one has to approach a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter of him. Then one performs Bhajana Kriya, the 64 different parts of sadhana bhakti. And then the third stage, the third thing one has to do in order to perform pure devotional service is called Sadhu Vartmanu Vartmanam, which means Vartma is the path, and it's the path that was taken by the previous acharyas. So following in the footsteps of the sadhus, we must come to the stage of performing puja or worship in a feeling of fraternity, of not just a reverential service, but with real feelings of friendship towards the Lord. That here is not only my provider, but my best friend. So the only one that can do this, according to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, is an akinchana. Akinchana means one who absolutely has no possessions. Only he who's released from the bodily conception of life can engage in the Lord's service 24 hours a day, and this is called technically astakala. When that happens, when we're out of the bodily conception of life, then ashtakala, it manifests. And Bhajana Rahasya is the ashtakala bhajan. So I'll explain what that means. These are all technical terms, but please, if you can bear with me to go over this, because it's very enlivening, quite profound. So this next slide, this explains what this is in technical terms. If you take 24 hours in a day and you divide it into 8 parts, each part is 3 hours each, and each one of those parts, approximately 3 hours, along with dawn and dusk, are called a yama. And the Maha Mantra, the 16 names of the Lord, the 16 names are broken into pairs of names. So there's 8 pairs, and those 8 pairs of the Maha Mantra are arranged by the Ashtayama, which is pretty amazing. The Shikshashtaka as well is composed according to the Ashtayama. Ashta means 8, right? Ashtayama. And even the 11 verses of Rupa Goswami, the Upadeshamrita, which I believe is also referred to as Smarna Mangala Stotram, it's based, along with many prayers of the Acharyas, they're based on this intense desire for Ashtakala, or continuous worship of the Lord 24 hours a day. And that is what is referred to as bhajan. So we'll go to the next slide, and hopefully this will, this one and the next slide, just 2 more slides, it'll be more clear. So there's 64 angas of bhakti, and of those there's 5 that are the most important, associated with devotees, chanting, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, living in a holy place, like a holy dham, and then of course worshiping the deity, archana. But amongst these 5, we all know that the chanting of the holy name is the most important. It's the best. So Bhaktivinode Thakur, he wrote the Harinam Chintamani specifically to emphasize this point. There's basically 4 main subject matters that are covered in the Harinam Chintamani. It delineates the glories of the holy name, the potency of the name, and then the necessary qualification for us, the sadhakas, to perform or to cultivate attachment and the mercy of the holy name. And then he very elaborately goes through the description of what is namabhas and what are the nam aparads. And then he especially details all 10 of the nam aparads. And then he closes with a brief description about the performance of performing bhajan. So as a sequel to the Harinam Chintamani, he wrote the Bhajana Rahasya, which elaborates to some degree how you should perform bhajan, so which is mentioned in this verse. So the concepts of Raganuga Bhakti, of course, were given to us by Rupa Goswami in the Bhaktivinode Rasamrita Sindhu, and later on that was elaborated on by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his books like the Madhurya Kadambini. And then Bhaktivinode Thakur, he wrote the Harinam Chintamani, which lays the foundation for how to perform Harinam Bhajan. And he gives us like an introduction for how to perform bhajan specifically. So he followed that up with the Bhajana Rahasya, which explains chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, and it outlines how to start to practice Raganuga Bhakti based on the Shikshashtaka verses. So this is the last slide. This is the most complicated. I hope that you can follow this. if you're reading along. So what he does is he systematically discusses the stages from Shraddha to Prema, given in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And he bases this on the development of our devotional service as given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Shikshashtaka. He divides this into 8 sadhanas, of course, which means practices. So 8 different practices which correspond to the 8 periods of the day. So if you remember the slide that we had previously, you've got the Ashtayamas, the 8 periods, or the Ashtakalya, how you divide the day up into different sections in order to have a 24 hours engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. So the first section, or the first sadhana, is equated to Shraddha, which is the end of the night. So we come in contact with devotional service somehow or other by the mercy of a sadhu, by unknowing mercy. Somehow or other we come to devotional service and we get a little glimpse of the light. It's the end of night. So that's the beginning of Shraddha. And he quotes from the first verse of the Shikshashtaka, which delineates all the glories of chanting the holy names of the Lord. And then in the second sadhana, he stresses the importance of sadhu sangha. So he equates that with the morning awakening of the soul, going towards the lotus feet of the Lord. So that one who chants in the association of the devotees, then we can become attentive by doing that. Because the first offense is to be not attentive. So how do you get out of that rut? It's by associating with advanced devotees of the Lord, by seeing their activities by osmosis, by hearing from them and taking their instruction and their association. Then we can start to become attentive. And he points out the second verse of the Shikshashtaka, where it says that although the holy name of the Lord has all the potencies, but Durdaivam, because of nam aparad, there's no fruit of prema for chanting, although everything is there within the holy name. So therefore we have to be very, very careful to avoid nam aparad while chanting. And this is the stage of sadhu sangha and anartha-nivritti in our advancement in devotional service. And then the third sadhana is the procedures and the qualifications for chanting. And this is based on the third Shikshashtaka verse, that gradually by attaining the qualities for chanting, the sadhaka, he attains real faith in devotional service, and that's the stage of Nishta Bhajan. So again, if you're looking at the chart, I mean, if you can follow this, I know there's a lot of writing there, but you've got the Ashtakalya Bhajan, of the Ashtagamas, how it's divided up into 8 sections, 3 hours each, 24 hours in a day, and that corresponds with the 8 pairs of the holy name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, etc. And that corresponds to the next column, to all the different Shikshashtaka verses, which corresponds to the stages of our development in devotional service, beginning from Shraddha and ending in Prema, which corresponds to these different 1 through 8, the different yamas or sadhanas, practices that Bhaktivinode Thakur is recommending. So once we get some initial faith, then we go to the fourth sadhana, which is like midday for the spirit soul, where there's no other desire than pure devotional service. And that is attained as mentioned in the first verse. So if we go back to the first verse of the Shikshashtaka, if one continues on this track of devotional service and sincerely is serving Krishna, then automatically he gets detachment from 2 things, bhukti and mukti. We don't even care about these things. So in the first verse, it mentions Cheto Darpana Marjanam. We become free of desire for bhukti or material enjoyment. And then Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. We also will become free from the afflictions of forest fire of this material world. So these two things, bhukti, enjoyment, and mukti, liberation, when you get to the stage of the fourth sadhana, which corresponds to the fourth verse of the Shikshashtaka, then we don't even care about bhukti and mukti. Quite an elevated stage. Then two things happen. All auspiciousness, as was mentioned, promised from the very beginning. Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. In that the moon, the full moon of auspiciousness and knowledge of devotional service, it becomes manifested. And all auspiciousness is there. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the Madhurya Kadambini, he equates this to two leaves of a sprouting plant. One leaf is called Shubhara and the other is called Kleshagni. So there's all auspiciousness, Shubhara, and Kleshagni means freedom from the miseries of this material world. And that happens when the false ego is completely destroyed. And that's Vidyu Vadu Jivanam, compared to in the first verse of the Shikshashika, of the bride, the young bride of knowledge is waiting to serve the devotee. We come out of illusion. We understand what our real self is. So at this stage, far from most of us, that's when we really get a taste. That's called ruchi. We get a real taste for the practice of devotional service, and this is the stage of ruchi bhajan. So the next sadhana, the fifth sadhana, is the afternoon of the soul. That's when we achieve the stage of attachment, which is ashakti. The sadhana that we perform, it lets us become aware of what our eternal form is as an eternal servant of the Lord. Ainanda Tanaja Kinkara. That's what it means, that we understand that we are an eternal part and parcel of the Lord. We're a tiny speck, and we're His servant, Kinkara. So the devotee, the sadhaka who practices Raganuga Bhakti, he takes shelter of Srimati Radharani and prays that somehow or other he can just become a little speckle, a maidservant, somehow or other, of her servant. Kripaya tava pankaj stita duli sadrishang vichintaya. Then that would be the stage that's attained at this sadhana. And then the evening of the soul, that's a sixth sadhana. These are the external symptoms of the performance of sadhana. Nayanan galad ashudharaya. Tears are pouring from the eyes, and vadanan gadgara ridaya gira, that our voice is choked up, and pulakar nichitang babukara, hairs are standing on end. These are all the symptoms of Sthayi Bhava, or Rati, real attachment. And also what develops is the sadhaka who's at this stage, he practices devotional service in two ways. There's two symptoms. One is that externally he's in his sadhaka form, but internally he's in his spiritual form. Very elevated stage. In this way, after attaining bhava, then he starts to really relish Krishna's personality, which is following in the mood of the gopis. The seventh sadhana is referred to as a late evening of the soul, and this is the internal symptoms. So the external symptoms, now these are the internal symptoms of perfection. And that's where the devotee relishes service and separation. Yugayitam ninishena chakshusha pravishayitam, where every moment is just like a yuga. and there's torrents of tears pouring from the eyes. And that leads to the eighth sadhana, which is the pastimes of night. That's Ashishava Padarotang Panastimam. So this is a meditation for the perfected devotee. So the Bhajana Rahasya is Bhaktivinode Thakur is like torchlight for all of us in darkness. This is what is our path for enlightenment. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he describes the Bhajana Rahasya as a guideline. You know, it's like if you're diving or something in murky waters, you can't see the hand in front of your face. You're diving in a cave or something, because the waters are so murky. And if you lose that lifeline, you may never find it again. You are lost. You're dead. So guideline is something essential for us to get from where we are now, the lowest stages of Asha or Bhaya up to Kartavya Buddhi. You know, wherever we are, to get to the highest perfection, which is Raga, which is Bhajana Rahasya, we have to hold on to this guideline, know what the ultimate goal is, know what the path is, and follow that path until we get to its end by the grace of the Lord. So I thought this was a nice a way to celebrate Bhaktivinode Thakur's appearance, which is tomorrow. I hope you got something out of it. It wasn't too complicated or technical like that. It wasn't meant to be, but just trying to explain. So if there's any questions or comments, I'll unmute everybody. Thank you very much for listening. Hare Krishna. Oops, somebody's talking. Anybody have anything they wanted to add or anything?
I like hearing those progressive stages that Bhaktivinode Thakur speaks about. It's just always nice to know that we are on this gradual process that has different stages. It's sort of almost like landmarks along the way. And I haven't hit many landmarks, but the few little, even, maybe I shouldn't even say many, I don't know if I've hit any, but I just certainly hit subtle things along the way that are very reassuring, knowing that the process is working. That, I'm definitely not the same, in many ways not the same person I started out when I first, I don't even want to think back to where I was when I first met devotees. But anyway, I like those descriptions, and it's really enlightening. I think that ultimately, it's already so good, and I don't think I've made tremendous advancement, a little, but it's so enlivening to know where this is ultimately going when we hear about those wonderful descriptions of when our hearts really become purified. It's very, very encouraging in the path. Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, isn't it neat how this, the Ashtakala Leela, Ashtakala Bhajan, it's got all these different stages, and they correspond to the stages of our advancement of devotional service, which corresponds to the Shikshashtaka, and then that corresponds to the pairs of names in the Hare Krishna mantra. So imagine the level of somebody who's chanting purely what's there in the Hare Krishna mantra. And then for us to not even pay attention is a crime.
Now, Ramananda, it is very technical and complicated, but I certainly appreciate your efforts. I wanted there's a sentence in the purport that struck me. It reads, "This means that the Lord, in order to show specific favor to the devotee, directs the devotee from within in such a way that ultimately he is delivered from the entanglement of material existence." I find that to be pretty inspiring, but does that mean, are we talking about the Chaitya Guru when that particular sentence in the purport?
I think so. Yeah, the Chaitya Guru, the Lord in the heart, Tesham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam Pudipurvidam Tadami Buddhi Yogam Tam. That when the Lord is pleased with our sincerity, then He inspires us from within the heart. Yeah, the Chaitya Guru. The Chaitya Guru comes out externally as the Guru that we can perceive. Krishna sends him and acts through him. So yeah, the Chaitya Guru guides us from within, and then the Guru from the outside, he guides us from without. So yeah, that's what I understand is being said here.
Well,
there's another. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I'm certainly struggling in my efforts to be Krishna conscious, and I'm wondering if I can derive from that sentence that Krishna will guide me specifically in what do I do now? What's the next thing I should do? You know what I mean? I mean, life is so complicated, and there's so many things that we're dealing with in ordinary life. Like, what do I do now? Do I cook some prasadam? Should I work on the garden? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'm being clear. But, just really wanting to know what I need to be doing next in order to advance in Krishna consciousness.
Well, one of the processes, Navada Bhakti, is Vandanam, is prayer, and certainly prayer to the Lord in the heart to guide me. What do I have to do in order to advance in devotional service? That's certainly there. There's hearing and chanting, and remembering is Vandanam, is praying sincerely to the Lord, and then He will guide us, certainly. The more sincere we are, then the more the Lord will guide us from within, and we all feel that. I'm sure you do.
Well, we pray.
Another thing that could be helpful. I'm sorry, go ahead, Prabhu. Go ahead. Daga.
It begs the question of Guru, his representative. If, we pray to Krishna for some sort of connection or some sort of guidance, He sends a guide. He sends a representative. If we're sincere. Somebody that's qualified to help us.
Right, and that's the key, sincerity. How do we get sincerity? I mean,
that's your own heart. You have to work that out yourself.
And don't worry, even if you're not sincere in one sense, because we're not. We've been in the material world a long time. We're quite rascals. So, I mean, that's okay. The process will still work. And I was going to say exactly what the Doctor said, that Krishna will send his representative, but not just say that Prabhupada has come, but because you're asking real specific questions, what service should I do? Should I cook? If you feel that you need some real specific guidance and mentoring, then you should find that devotee that really inspires you, a god brother or one who's a senior devotee. And that way, Krishna can guide you through those devotees that you have some nice chemistry with. And they can give you some suggestions that are very more specific. And it's people that know you individually, that know you as an individual, someone that you're able to reveal your heart to. And then as you reveal your heart, if you find a devotee with systems of loving exchange, then you can find those devotees where you can really open your heart and reveal. And they may help you with giving some specific directions. But don't worry that you're not sincere. I'm not very sincere either. But I'm pretty sincere about just wanting to get out of here have the material world, which isn't a great thing. We should be more concerned that we just want to serve Krishna, not save my own neck. But we are where we're at, and just accept that. That's okay. So Lord Chaitanya is the Pavana. Lord Chaitanya is saving the very, very whole.
Well, I question my own sincerity because, why am I even attracted to Krishna consciousness? Well, I want to get out of I want to relieve myself from pain and suffering in this material world. So that's kind of a selfish thing.
Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Arto, those that are suffering, those who are in distress, there's that verse, Chatur Vidi Bhajate Mam Janak Sukhatin Arjuna, Arto Jigyasa Arto Tigani Chabharatarsabha. Krishna's mentioning that, hey, there's pious people that come. And some are in distress. Some want material opulences. That's okay. Come to Krishna for it. If you feel that that's certainly one of my motivations, that material world's a scary place, and I'm not. The more I'm learning, the more I don't want to be here, and that's okay. Eventually, if we follow the process, as your heart becomes purified, those neophyte desires that many of us may have, myself highly included, they'll go away in time. We have to trust the process.
Yeah, that's a bona fide motivation.
And how can you say you're not sincere? My God, you're taking out of your day every day to come to this Bhagavatam class. In spite of the fact that you feel so many material desires, I spent time with you. You came, you visited, and we hung out. You're very sincere. Don't cut yourself too short. I mean, humility is good, but you need a nice balance. You should be, you need a balance to see, practically where you're at, what you're really doing, and what you should be doing. The balance is important. Govinda Prabhu, you're going to say something?
Well, I don't know the devotee, but that's a bona fide motivation if we're suffering in the material world to turn to Krishna, as you quoted. If you're chanting 16 rounds and you're following the 4 regulative principles, you're sincere. Hearing and chanting probably wanted us to read at least an hour or two, and even more, if we have. And then he stressed going out and distributing his literatures, or reading his letters, and practically every letter, Prabhupada is asking the devotees, please continue to go out and give this Krishna consciousness daily. He's asking every letter. I've read, I forget how many letters there are, 3,000, but probably 2,500 of them, Prabhupada is asking the devotees go out daily, give people Krishna consciousness. So I don't know if you live near a temple or I don't know your circumstances, but if we're engaged in that way, just like myself right now, I'm in between services, but I'm going out every day, either distributing books or right now I'm helping this devotee on his farm. We're putting in an irrigation system 400 feet today. We engage in whatever devotional service that is available, and if we say there isn't any, then go out and preach. That's so ecstatic. You can take some prasadam with you as well. But again, you're sincere. You're chanting 16 rounds, following the 4 regulative principles. That's sincerity. But Narayana, you gave some very wonderful answers and encouragement as well.
And even if I think there's many devotees where maybe they're not chanting their 16 rounds, and maybe they're struggling a little bit with the principles. But that doesn't mean that you're not sincere. As long as you're still trying, that's sincere. Don't be discouraged if you're struggling. We've all had our struggles. We've all had our ups and downs. So I would just sort of balance out a little bit. Is that sometimes devotees are having a real hard time, but they're still sincere. And Krishna knows that. He knows in our heart that we're coming from a real bad background, a real bad, infinite number of lives in this, practically infinite number of lives, innumerable lives in this material world, material existence.
It comes down to, do you want it? How much do you want it? And how much do you want to leave your attachments here? But there's a gradation, and not to get discouraged, but any desire for this is good. But so I'm seeing another thing in the purport, and then I want to ask Ramananda a question. It's in the verse, but it's also in the purport. No one but the Supreme Lord can help the living entity be delivered from the entanglement of this material world. And might be in the Harinam or it's in one of the books where Vishnu, he's the giver of liberation. And then there's some controversy about Lord Shiva has a benediction, or even Mahamaya has been given some circumstance where she can release the jiva. But what this statement struck me this morning is that we need to fix our relationship with Krishna. We have to get right with Krishna. And so he holds the keys to us being released. He decides when and where that happens. Because we're going to be accepted back into the spiritual world. So it makes sense that, you know, it's his arrangement, it's his energy. Although he's aloof from it, it's his arrangement, and he's within our hearts, his super soul, and he has the power to release us. But it's all about us reestablishing our relationship with him. So I appreciated your class, Ramananda. I got an email where there was some obstacle to Giri Govardhan giving the class today, and I was offered a short notice opportunity to give the class. I'm glad I didn't take it up, because it was pretty amazing for me. And then I'm looking at these slides, and you got me really fired up to take a look or read or study both Harinam Chintamani and Bhajana Rahasya. So did you come up with these graphics yourself? Yeah,
I put those together.
So the pie chart for the Asta Kalaliya, that chart is yours, and then the other ones.
Yeah, they're copyrighted, but with permission.
That's funny. Are you serious about that?
No, I'm not serious.
Right. Where did you get that graphic with the hand with all the senses on it? That's a funny graphic.
Oh, you know what? That's you can find it on the internet. That I found on.
Yeah, it's a funny graphic. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, the last one. Just from reading the book, you broke that down from the text that you're reading.
Right.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, one Gaudiya, he asked Mula Prakriti, she's gone now, Gopa's wife, somebody that chanted 64 rounds for years. He asked her how her bhajan was going, and you were mentioning that bhajan's a little complicated, and you broke it down nicely. It is complicated, but at the same time, for the simple-hearted, it's simple. It's your practice. It's not exactly sadhan, but it's, what stage you're at and how you're going about getting to the next stage. How's your bhajan was the question. So Mula, she said, it's going okay, because she's chanting her rounds and following the regs. And then this Gaudiya said, oh, my bhajan is not good. And then Mula kind of caught what he was saying and said, oh, my bhajan is not good. So there's different ways to think about our attempt to be Krishna conscious. And for some of us at least, we wouldn't be discouraged by thinking that we can do better. That there's room for improvement. So, how is your bhajan? Well, it may, the honest answer for most of us is it's not going that well, and I could do better.
Yep, for sure. Excuse me. Okay. All right. Well, Prabhus, thank you so much for coming. And hopefully we'll see you tomorrow for Giri Govardhan Prabhu's class. Anything else? Or can we go ahead and...
Very nice class, Ramananda. I really, really appreciated your class. Thank you.
Very nice class.
Oh, thank you. Glory to Srila Prabhupada, Śrīmad Bhagavatam.
Glory to Prabhupada.
Haribol.
Haribol.